What is going on, Pretender here, back with another Honkai style guide, and as you do see, we do have the Realm of the Strange event for Cavern double drops. By the time you are watching this is already out on Asia and Europe servers. North America does have 2 hours, so you probably already used one if you are on Asia or Europe. So hopefully for your next runs, you will have this video to make sure you are farming correctly. So this video, I'm going to take you over every single Cavern that we do have, and why I would recommend it and why I wouldn't recommend it, so you know how to optimally farm and also be informed correctly. That's all I want to say. If you guys find this video helpful in any way, shape, or form, drop a like, would be greatly appreciated. If you're new or haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn on the bell icon for future videos like this, along with all other types of style content. And let's get on with the video. You know, double the drops, double the garbage regardless, so let's just again get into it. So starting it off with the older options that we've had since practically the beginning of the game. First one down here containing both the ice set and the wind set. The way you want to optimize these double relic farming events, whether it be Planet Feixiao or Realm of the Strange, is to make sure you are using your attempts on a place that has 2 different relic sets or ornaments that you are actually in need of. The problem with these early ones, and just this one in particular, is practically no one really uses the ice set. There are some characters such as like Yanqing, Jinglu who can use it, but it's still not really their best anymore. And they have better options you can farm elsewhere now. But the reason I want to talk about this in particular is only to the very few people that are super into zero cycling with this wind set, as the 4-piece wind set is very common for people that like to go for zero cycles and very high attempt clears, thanks to the advanced forward of the action that you do get by 25% with the 4-piece, even if the 2-piece is wasted. But if you are one of those players, you are most likely not really watching this video or probably subscribe to me in general because you have no need for guides. So for majority of the player base, I would definitely not recommend farming this because again, 4-piece ice set, it's something you can use if you do have a 2-piece set, but everyone has a 4-piece set that's just better. And so the ice set is not worth it, and the eagle set is only really worth it if you are able to hit certain thresholds. But honestly, even if you are trying to run this on some people, or you're slowly trying to get it on your supports at least, and even if you're not interested in zero cycles, it's honestly best to farm something else and use your relic remains on the set because it's just that much better, since you are not wasting the time of getting ice pieces that will not be beneficial. So overall, I would not recommend doing this one. The next cavern is the one with the physical set and the OG thief or break set. I don't recommend this one either because the 4-piece of the physical set is only really used on Clara. Argenti can kind of use it, but at that point you're better off farming Scholar. And then when it comes to the thief set, situationally people can use it when they are a break related character, but usually combining 2-piece with something else, or just running 4-piece, or just running 4-piece Iron Calvary if they are break DPS such as Firefly, Rappa, and Boothill. That's always better. The extra energy is nice, but for the most part there are better options that are also more efficient to use these double drops on. And so in short, I definitely would not recommend farming this because overall there really isn't a use. If you are someone that uses Clara, I would recommend just farming something else and then using the relic remains to make the physical set. So overall for the Path of Jabbing Punch, I do not recommend it either. Now the next one with Path of Drifting, containing the outgoing healing set and also the Musketeer set. So the 4-piece of the Passerby set is actually still a relatively used set because the extra skill point you can start off with definitely does help you set up if you do need it, but a lot of teams nowadays don't really need the extra skill point, and it's really easy to just set up regardless. So usually the way that people do use the set on their healers is with the 2-piece and then combining 2-piece with one of the speed sets for the extra speed because usually healers want to be fast. But usually the 4-piece isn't really used anymore, so it's really not something you should go out of your way of. And then when it comes to Musketeer itself, the only real people that can actually use the 4-piece fully is mainly just Danheng IL, Aglia, and also March 7th, the Hunt one to be specific. And the thing is, when it comes to Aglia, she has a better set already with the brand new Triumphant set. That's already her best in slot, so Musketeer doesn't really have a use there. For IL Donning, running 4-piece as opposed to 2-piece with something like 2-piece attack or 2-piece imaginary or 2-piece of one of those and 2-piece Scholar set, the difference is very negligible, so farming for a 4-piece specifically for him is very much not worth it. And same thing does actually apply to March 7th Hunt. This is her best 4-piece and her best set in general to use, but the difference between running 2-piece or just even having 4-piece imaginary set, it's just something that's not really worth going full out on and using your double drops. Especially since Musketeer is something that if you're a longer time player, you probably already have good pieces, so you have no reason to farm it. Or you're doing weeklies, which also do drop Musketeer sets. And just trying to accumulate Musketeer pieces over time while doing your Echo of War runs is a lot better than wasting stamina on actually trying to get it itself. And for those reasons, I do not really recommend farming this. Again, the 2-piece of Passerby is still very much used, but it's something you should definitely just use Relic remains on. And then when it comes to Musketeers, this is something you accumulate over time thanks to doing Echo of War and such. Or if you're a longer time player, you probably already have good pieces laying around, but overall I would not recommend doing it. Next one is the Path of Providence. This is practically the same thing I was talking about of the actual one with Eagle set. But instead of the Eagle set, this time we do have the Quantum set, and the other set is the Guard set. Overall, practically no one really uses the 4-piece of the Guard set anymore. Usually the people that can use it usually opt to do 2-piece with them. So the 2-piece is somewhat used, at least when it comes to just having pieces laying around now. You wouldn't actually go out your way to farm this for anyone. The Genie set is the other set that would be really good just overall. Even if you're putting on a non-quantum character, for example, Jinglu used this as their technical best in slot set for the longest time, giving you a free 10% defense ignore, and if they have quantum weakness, it's an additional 10%, giving you up to a 20% defense ignore. 20% defense ignore on its own is good, especially when you combine this with other sources of defense ignore, which we now have a good chunk of defense ignore sources, so using the set with those is really good still. But in any case, it's the same thing with the Eagle set. If you do want to put this on your DPS, I'd recommend just using Relic Remains, because the other Relic set on this is going to be the Guard set, which for the most part, again, you would never really use the 4-piece. 2-piece is still something you can use, but even then, it's really just not something going out of the way to farm. And so overall, I would also not recommend doing this one. Now, the next one is the one with the Knight set and also the Band set. To no surprise, I also don't recommend doing this one. You know, practically any of the older ones I don't recommend doing because they usually have a dead set with it. This one's a bit different because the 4-piece on this can actually be used, such as with Aventurine or Japard, and even the 2-piece can be used on one of them since they both do scale their shields off defense. So the 2-piece does come in handy with there, and the 4-piece of the Band set is also usable on your lightning characters, as usually lightning characters get a good increase for buffing their attack. They're not really HP scaling or other scaling in this case. Jingwan can still use the set, Kafka can still use the set. The only thing is it's not their best in slot, and no lightning character really has this as their best in slot anymore. Although I will say, if you do have Japard or Aventurine that you really just want to get better 4-pieces for on the Knight set, and you also do have Kafkan and or Jingwan that could benefit from doing this, and you don't already have better versions of the other better sets, in those situations this can be one you can't farm. It's definitely on one of the lowest priorities of recommended if you are in that case, but it's still one you can farm. So for the most part, I would definitely advise to not do this, but in those cases that you are, you can do it. Next one is the one with the 4-piece of the Fire Spit and 4-piece of the Wastelander set. So 4-piece of the Fire set, this set is bad. Practically no one ever used the 4-piece. The 2-piece, it was just used because, you know, fire damage and we didn't have much back then, but the 4-piece was always just bad. When it comes to the Wastelander set, the 4-piece is actually still really good, and it's something a lot of imaginary characters can still use to this day. Although even if imaginary characters do already have better pieces, because most of them already have other options you can use that are better or just as good, it's still something you can use, and you maybe have good pieces laying around already for maybe when you farmed for it back then. But because this set, the Fire Spit set, is just really bad, it's not worth farming this because you practically have this dead set where you can use a 2-piece. But overall, it's just better to, again, use double drops on something and just your stamina in general where you are being more efficient with it rather than farming 1 out of 2. And as I mentioned, if you are going for the 4-piece imaginary set for an imaginary character, there's usually always a better set you can use or one that's equally as good. And so due to those reasons, I would not actually recommend farming this one. Now we're getting into some stuff that actually is on the more recommended side. Practically everything here is going to be on the more recommended side, and it practically will just be getting increased, and I will give my reasons on why. So the Path of Elixir, this one contains the max HP set and the Hackerspace set. The 2-piece of the max HP set is often used on anyone that scales up HP for sustaining or their damage, or you know, if you have Blade, then the 4-piece is his best in slot. When it comes to DPSs, to use the full 4-piece, practically no one does use it besides Blade. Only other person who can really use it is technically Mide or the upcoming character Castros, but they have significantly better options. But the 2-piece is still very valuable as opposed to other ones, because HP scaling, usually the max HP increase is a lot more noticeable. So getting 2-piece of this for your characters that may be able to use it is very nice. 2-piece on someone like Lynx or Fushuan is very common. And then when it comes to Hackerspace, 2-piece speed is super common, especially on your supports where you might be doing 2-piece speed, or 2-piece speed is something else. So 2-piece on one of these speed sets is always just super valuable on its own, and the 4-piece of Hackerspace is also really good, giving everyone 12% speed when using ultimate on an ally. So anyone that does use their ultimate on an ally will give everyone 12% speed, which is also very valuable if you do account for your tunings, because in some cases it might mess up your tuning, so definitely be sure to note that. So this is one that could be recommended on the side if you have a lot of people that can make use of the 2-piece max HP increase, which is actually a lot of people. And or if you also have Blade and you do use them, just because Hackerspace is going to benefit practically every single account unless you already have godlike Hackerspace pieces to the point where you don't need any more. In that case, then you should not farm this, but if you are in the case where you can use better Hackerspace pieces, and you also do have some HP scale characters that can benefit from the 2-piece, and or you have Blade, then this can be a one you can't farm. Now the next one is the Path of Darkness, giving you the follow-up set with the Ash Blaze of Grand Duke, and also the Prisoner set. The follow-up set still does have good value. It is very, very good still on Topaz, and is still really good for Jingwan, while the Dot set is still the best in slot for literally every single Dot character. And due to the fact mostly anyone that does have a follow-up attack can use this, you want to make sure you do give it to someone that has multi-hits on their actual follow-up attack. Otherwise, the 4-piece is kind of wasted, such as one of the characters that don't use it is Dr. Feixiao because his follow-up attack hits once. If you do have multi-hitting follow-up attacks, again, such as a crit Himiko, if you have Jade, because in her enhanced thing, she doesn't hit too much, but she still does hit enough to where it's still fine. Or someone especially like Topaz, who hits a bunch of times, Jingwan, who hits a bunch of times. And you also do have a good chunk of Dot characters, so if you have Kafka, Black Spawn, you're using Gwenifin. If you are still a Dot user, then this is another cavern that you can actually farm and will actually have good value out of it. And so if you are in that case, I would recommend it. Next one is the Path of Dream Driver, which contains the Pioneer set and the Watchmaker set. This is one of my most recommended ones because the 4-piece of the Pioneer set is quite literally mostly always best in slot for anyone that can inflict a debuff and or multiple debuffs. If you're running them on a team where you are able to have 3 debuffs on the enemy and the person you do have the 4-piece on does actually have a ability to inflict a debuff to get the aforementioned effects increased by 100%, usually for those characters, the Pioneer 4-piece is always the best in slot. And then when it comes to the Watchmaker set, you usually always put this on your break supports, so HMC and Ruanmei specifically, which are 2 very, very commonly used characters, so that's why getting more pieces of Watchmaker, especially if you are a break user, is very valuable. But just like always, if you are someone that only really benefits with the Pioneer set and you don't really use HMC or Ruanmei or anyone that would really benefit from Watchmaker, then in that case, just like others, I'd recommend using your Relic Remains on Pioneers and farming something else instead, because you would not need the Watchmaker set there. But if you are, which is most people can use better Watchmaker pieces, and for the most part practically everyone will be able to use better Pioneer pieces, in those cases I would definitely recommend farming this cavern. Next option is the Path of Cavalier, which contains the Iron Calvary set and the Wind-Soaring set. So the Iron Calvary set is the best in slot for quite literally every single break DPS, so Rappa, Firefly, and Butio to name a few. And also really works for a DPS link shot. If you are able to hit requirements and doing 4-piece on that, it's going to be the best for her damage. Is also very, very good on a Fugue. If you are able to hit the requirements and do 4-piece, it'll be the best for their damage as well. So if you are someone that does actively use break characters and are looking to get better pieces, then this is going to be a valuable set. And it's also accompanied by Wind-Soaring set, which is used by a few characters in the game. There's still really not that many people that do use it. The primary ones are Feixiao and Yunli, which a lot of people do own Feixiao, but not too many people have Yunli. So this might not be a set that is super, super valuable to you, but if you do have Feixiao and or Yunli, and you also do have break characters that would be benefiting from this, so again, primarily Firefly, Rappa, and Boothil. And additive to that would be Fugue and Linksha, and also Himiko. I forgot to mention that Himiko on a break build, which is her best build, is going to be using 4-piece Iron Calvary. In those cases, this is a very valuable one you can farm, but if you really don't have a use for the Wind-Soaring set, but you might have a use for this, again, just use your Relic Remains and farm something else, because you wouldn't really have a need for this, because the 2-piece can be used in a combination for other characters, but again, you usually want to get 4 pieces anyway, so your goal isn't to farm a 2-piece. For a character for the future, you always want to get their 4-piece, so in that case, just use Relic Remains. But if you do have characters that would benefit from both of these, then do farm it. Next one is the Path of Uncertainty, probably the best cavern to farm in the game, containing Relieved Ordeal and the Scholar set. Any action advance given characters, so primarily Sunday, Bronya, and Sparkle, have Relieved Ordeal as their best in slot. 2-piece giving you speed, so it's already as valuable as Hackerspace for the 2-piece as I mentioned previously. 4-piece giving you a big increase to crit damage that stacks up to 2 times, which is fantastic for those characters that would be able to buff the single ally, so Sunday especially is able to get it practically right away. Sparkle and Bronya are a bit slower, but they still definitely love running this. And then for any other support slash healer, the 2-piece is very valuable. On the flip side, we do have Scholar here, which the 2-piece is already super good, giving you 8% crit rate. Fantastic for a 2-piece, and the 4-piece increases damage dealt by skill and ultimate by 20%, and an additional 25 for the next skill after using ultimate. And a lot of DPS in this game would benefit from this. Jinglu, Zele, Mide, the Herda, and so on. There's a lot of characters that benefit from this so much, already benefiting a bunch from the 2-piece and benefiting benefiting a lot from the 4-piece. I did mention previously you usually don't farm for 2-piece 2-pieces, but the 2-piece on Scholar is such a universal thing for any crit DPS, and the 2-piece of the Relieved Ordeal set being as good as the 2-piece Hackerspace because it's the same one, is why even just farming 2-piece for 2-piece on one of these is just super valuable on its own. So in most cases, practically every account would be able to benefit from this unless you already have really godlike pieces. And so this is probably my most recommended one you would want to farm. And then the last one is the Path of Arya, containing the hero set and also the poet set. These sets are pretty niche right now. The only person that can really use the hero set is Aglia, which is her best slot, and the other character would be RMC. While the poet set right now, you do have more options, as the 4-piece is really universal for anyone that would have low speed or just base speed builds. If you have someone that can go lower than 95 before going into battle, you get up to 32% crit rate, which is really good. So you are working with a lot more options when it comes to this. So you have stuff like Yunli, Clara, Tribi, especially upcoming character Casters. Certain setups with the Herda as well can use it. Even if the 2-piece is wasted, the 4-piece is very valuable for those characters. And so poet set for a lot of characters, if you do use those characters that do go below the 95 speed threshold with the decrease by 8%, if you are able to hit those, and again, you do use those characters such as Yunli, Clara, and so on, that would be able to go below the 95 with the decrease and would benefit from the 32% crit rate to get a better build. Then the poet set is very valuable. Everyone has RMC, so you could be getting a benefit to farming this. And if you have Aglia, then it's that much better. So in those cases, this is another very, very valuable cavern you can farm. But let's say you don't really use RMC, and or you also don't have Aglia, and for the poet set, let's say you already have a good set for your Tribi, or you just don't have Tribi at all, and you aren't using this set on other characters such as Yunli, Clara, you aren't doing the setup with the Herda, and you just don't have anyone that you'd want to get below 95 to get the whole setup going, then in that case, you can avoid farming this. But if you are in the cases where you do have those cases for both sets, it's valuable. So again, it depends on you. And yep, that is every single cavern and going over what I do think about what's recommended or not. Practically, the old ones are all the ones I don't recommend, and then from the elixir situation and up is the ones I would recommend if you do fall in the categories I did mention. Again, the best thing you can do is to just farm one that you do have used for both relic sets of. For an example, I need pieces for Castris, and I would also like better pieces for Tribi, and also better pieces for my Aglia, so I'm going to be using this on Path of Arya. You may be someone that wants to have better pieces for your Sunday or your Sparkle or your Bronia, and you also have characters like Mide, the Herda, that could also use better pieces, that you would just go ahead and farm the Path of Uncertainty. It's very, very individual dependent because not all of us share the same account. So my advice is just to help you understand what you should be farming for your situation. But yeah, once again, I hope you guys found the video helpful. If you did, dropping a like would be greatly appreciated. If you haven't done so already, be sure to subscribe and turn the bell icon for future videos like this along with other types of Star Wars content. Yep, peace out.